guys in the dark.
Someone I had just literally met became obsessed with me. Because of this person, I was a victim of 4 years worth of stalking. I met the man, who I will call Joe, at a friend of mine's request, while I happened to be at a Chicago bar with a group of friends back in 1999. We both talked, we drank, and we danced, like many college students enjoying the night out. He seemed cool when I had first met him the first couple of times. Yet, the night of fun turned into a prolonged nightmare. I never filed a police report about the case, but when Joe said that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me within a month of us knowing each other, I backed away from him. That I didn't feel the same way that he did. Joe had persisted in his attempts to woo me. He followed me wherever I went. He even cried a lot as he had begged me to accept him. He would whisper on the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, "I love you. Katie, you're so beautiful." It's been 4 years. You'd think that he would take a hint. I had made it very clear to him that I was not looking for a serious relationship, especially with him. We had only gone out a few times, but he kept calling me and wanting to see me. He wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, but didn't believe in marriage. Joe was new to Chicago at the time, had 3 months left on a temporary job that he was doing. He told me that he didn't have a set job at the time when I had met him. He just moves from place to place. He hated Chicago, but he was ready to live there just for me. When I'd made it clear on numerous occasions that I did not feel the same way that he felt, he refused to accept my rejection. When I started dating other men, Joe accused me of not wanting a relationship with him because he was black. I kept telling him that race has no impact on my feelings for him. I had told him that his personality was prone to changing within a matter of moments, and that was one of the things that deterred me from being with him. One night, my car had gotten towed. He insisted on paying for it. When I didn't let him, he had gotten angry, and then he left. Later on that night, he had told me that he wished that I would die. One moment, he would say to me that I love you, and then I would not say it back, and he would say that I was a horrible person, and I didn't think about other people's feelings. Joe had moved to Wisconsin back in January of 2000, and I thought that I was rid of him for good. But then he started showing up in Chicago, frequenting the places that I had visited. I decided that I would have a guy pretend to be my husband, and that I would call him once, just in case, so that I would help throw him off my back. Joe knew my daily routine, and he found me no matter where I went. I saw him in a bar one night. He started telling me that I was lying, and that I really did love him. He was upset that I wasn't returning his feelings. He used to bring girls to his home, and then call me from the neighboring room while the girls were asleep. Even though he knew that his actions upset me, he kept on insisting that he would give up all his bad habits if I would just accept him and love him. Even though I repeatedly told Joe that I wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with him, he would continue on contacting me. Between September and October of 2001, Joe had called me almost constantly, but suddenly he had stopped calling for about 3 months when he realized that I was not going to answer his calls. Shortly after, he decided that he would once again call. Even though I had caller ID, I would not know when he was calling, as he would call from a different number every single time. In between the phone calls, he would jump from one state to another, and then change jobs quite frequently. Throughout the time that he had stalked me, I continued to date other people. One time, my boyfriend even tried to call Joe, but since he had moved so often, it was difficult to even find him. All of my friends had advised me to hang up the phone as soon as I had recognized Joe's voice, but he started to leave strange messages on my phone. One time, my mother even heard a message saying, "I love you" at home. My mom had known about him about this time, at least to some extent, and thought that he was a psycho. My mother never really insisted that I call the police. My mom's the kind of handle-it-yourself type of woman, and made cracks about it once or twice. I didn't call the police on him, so he would get off my trail, because I didn't think that he was capable of hurting anybody. But I did tell him that I would contact the authorities if he had persisted and bothered me more. I never thought that he would do anything harmful. Once Joe had realized his phone calls weren't getting his message across, he turned to a new method of communication. He started to mail letters to me. It's not like he would mail a regular letter. I would know immediately that it was him when I saw his letters without opening them. He would write "I love you" on the covers, and each had a top 10 list. Each one would describe a quality about me that Joe had found attractive, like a list of my good qualities, or the reason that Joe had loved me. He even wrote letters to my family. I felt weary on my family's behalf, as I was living with them. He even sent a letter to my best friend. That letter had asked my best friend to treat me well and take care of me. While I was dating other people, the obsession had become even more serious. He would show up at random times. I decided to move to Georgia, but I kept the same cell phone number until January of 2003. That was when Joe last directly contacted me. It really sucks when you have to change what you have to do and your daily lifestyle just because of something like this. My only reason for keeping the same cell phone number after changing states was because I thought it would be hard giving everybody back home my new contact number. But Joe had called me on my cell phone after I'd arrived in Georgia. I decided to finally change my number right after that. I'm still scared that somehow, some way, he's going to figure out where I am. If people really want to find you, they will. Recalling my actions, I was too nice to him. I realize sometimes you don't want to be too mean either. I let it go on longer than I wanted it to. As a result of the stalking, I'm now cautious around men, and I'm careful with forming new relationships, because Joe really scared me. Joe still contacts my family in Chicago, so he can find out information about me. If I heard from him today, I would literally just freak out. My heart would stop. I'm just hoping that one day Joe finally gets the hint and just leaves me alone. I was riding a public train home after spending the day downtown in Chicago, visiting my family, when a man moved from one side of the train car to sit next to me. I thought this behavior was pretty weird. I didn't think much of it. The man proceeded to talk to me. At first, he was friendly. Started with a greeting and a discussion of the weather. What had started as a pleasant discussion had deteriorated to him making sexual comments about my body. I was clearly uncomfortable. I got up to leave the train at the next stop. The man had got up to leave with me. We had both left the train. The man had continued the inappropriate comments to me. I swiftly walked down the platform, down away from the man, past other people, as he had followed me. Finally, I slipped a canister of pepper spray out of my purse. I turned around, and I aimed the pepper spray canister directly between the man's eyes. His eyes got wider as he realized what exactly he was looking at. He turned away, and then ran away from me immediately. I'm definitely glad that I carry a pepper spray with me at all times. So at the time, I was about a 20-year-old male in college. Typical things going on. Personally, I've always been the type of weird person myself. It's a lot more of showing I'm not one to be messed around with than anything. So it's about around January. I've got this friend I had recently met, and for all purposes, I'll call her Miranda. So Miranda had been walking down a hallway with me, and another friend, I'll call him Jake, had accidentally bumped into this rather tall guy. I myself am only 6'3", while this guy was at least 6'5". Miranda was shorter, probably around 5'4". Jake was short, but African American. Fit, looked like he could whoop some ass. I'm decently built, like an old-style wrestler from the late 1800s to 1900s. This guy was tall, curly brownish hair. Don't quite remember his eye color, but he was white. So she bumps into him, and he turns to her, saying, "You know that bump was pretty hot. I bet your hair could smell nice going down my drain at night." So creeped out, as well most of my friends being decently easy to scare social awkward people. She ran off, so Jake stepped in to say to this guy, "I'll whoop your ass if you ever talk to her like that again." I'm standing there like this guy is pathetic, so he looks down Jake, stating with that kind of stare, like he knows that he is superior, but he isn't. "I'll eat you with a bowl of cornflakes, field worker." So I hold Jake back, because it was clear that he was ready to fight him. I look to the guy with a blank stare. "You know those cornflakes would be mighty fine with all 4 of your limbs chopped off for soup. You want to step into my dungeon, you slut?" This weirdly shocked this tall guy. We did end up learning his name from another woman, so we can just call him James. So the next few days, he was asking my friends about Miranda. Just normal questions, but visibly being creepy while doing so. So later, me, as well as Miranda, were hanging out in her room. It was light out for once. She hears a knock on the door, so she goes to look through the little eye hole thing some of the college dorms have for their doors. It's that guy standing there with a sign that was turned on in his lower region of his body. So freaking out, she froze up. Noticing this, I walk over so that I could see through the peephole. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty weird, but I'm not stupid. So I usually carry a knife on me, either in my pocket or if I need to hide it better. Strapped onto my body, because paranoia is a bitch. I pull it out, then open up the door quickly as I had my friend go into her bathroom. The guy goes, "Oh, it's only you, asshole." I lick my lips, holding out my knife, and I look at him. "Leave, or I'm gonna cut you and drain your blood until you die, little piggy." So he looks alarmed at this and runs off. I can't say for sure, but I thought he had a rag in his hands behind him. So I'm just assuming that he was planning on, the whole chloroform and the rag smell kind of thing. I talked to my friend after, and we reported him. We didn't report the whole thing, though, because the whole part of me having a knife on these grounds would have not went so well. So I ended up staying for another term of college. Decent scores in the courses. This dude had left my friend alone for about 2 months. The last time he tried anything, my friend Miranda was walking with Jake, as well as another friend who is just as tall as this guy. Pretty skinny, 6-pack. To be honest, I found his friend pretty hot. I'll call him John. So the guy steps out behind a corner and tries to grab Miranda by the arm. And what happened next, I expected. Don't know exactly who did it, but either it was Jake or John had got the guy on the ground. They stomped him out pretty good. The guy was brought to the hospital and charges were filed. So about a month later, as I ended up leaving half a term early, came back a few weeks later for graduation, found out that this guy had been let go of police custody as well since the college wasn't the greatest. They didn't have camera proof of him doing any of this. He had been sighted outside of the windows at night looking in on people. No clue if they ever found him after. But it's just kind of weird this happened. All I know is during all of this guy usually left any room I walked into because I might have out-creeped the fucker to the point that he avoided me, which I found pretty cool, I guess. I'm 22 years old now, going to be 23, and my friends graduated from their courses too. And every now and then, I hear my friend Miranda always thank me for being so weird to protect her from them. Honestly, my story is not too bad. Though I would still rather never meet this person again. I was stalked, but not because they were into me. Because they were into my best friend, Emma. Emma is gorgeous, like to obscene level, and has always had guys and girls fawning over her. She had a friend named Mike. Mike is who this story is about. I met Mike through Emma, and it was clear immediately that Mike was obsessed with her. She was actually into him too for a little bit. But she wanted something not serious. Mike came on hard and heavy, so Emma distanced herself from him. She distanced herself even more after he made some shocking comments about his opinion on sexual assaults, mostly being fake. When Emma and I graduated high school, we had planned to move in together, but due to a family situation, she only stayed at our place about 2 days a week and never on a set schedule. She also couldn't keep a job to save her life. Her family life was chaotic and made it where she would have to leave at a moment's notice. Emma also had several places that she crashed at. Family, friends, my family. It depended on her situation and any odd jobs that she was working. She did a lot of odd jobs. Babysitting, yard work, elder care, catering, things like that. Nowhere stable, and often she wouldn't know what she was doing until that day. After Emma distanced herself from Mike, I started to realize that he was at my workplace often, like 3 or so times a week. It would not have been too weird, except my work was a department store for women and children. No men's clothing at all in this store. At first, Mike would just come in, do a lap, and leave. It was weird, but I honestly just thought that he was walking the mall. Lots of people do that, as my town was practically no entertainment. Then Mike started hanging out in the store and talking to me while I worked. Always talked about Emma. How is Emma? Why is she avoiding me? Those kind of questions. I was evasive, giving one-word answers, trying to tell him I needed to work. My manager scolded me for having friends hang out while working, when I explained I did not want him there, and that he wanted to know about my friend. My manager, he was pretty awesome, asked if I wanted him to talk to Mike. I said yes. I was relieved. After that, Mike went back to doing a lap and leaving until my manager eventually stationed a big loss prevention guy at my register as a deterrent. It worked. No more Mike at work. I had won. Except I had not counted on Mike being extra creepy. He started showing up at my house. Couple of points. Mike did not have a car, and I lived in a different town than Mike. My family and my job, about 20 minutes by car. No public transportation in my town, or in his. Uber did not exist in his area then either, and Mike didn't have a job as far as I knew. Mike knew where I lived because when I first moved in, we had a housewarming party and accidentally made the Facebook invite public. Mike started coming over at random times, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes in the evenings, always asking to speak to Emma. I always told him Emma wasn't there, even if she was. For her safety, I advised her not to come to the house anymore, and to tell Mike that she wasn't interested, which she did, bluntly, no more distancing, and then blocked him. And this time I moved in a new roommate, a coworker who, while also female, had a gun and a big boyfriend. Mike started coming by less frequently, and any time he did, I would tell him that he wasn't welcome. Now I know I should have called the cops, but there were two things preventing me. One, I was from a not grand family who avoided cops for the most part. Two, my new roommate was a criminal law major, and she was already concerned about how that would appear on her career. Not great reasons, but for a 19 to 20-year-old, it was enough reasons for me not to mention it. Eventually I stopped seeing Mike, but I would still occasionally spot him places that I was. The mall, my town's grocery store, and my dog's favorite park. I stopped posting on Facebook around this time, because even though Mike was blocked, he was clearly still able to see my posts. I also got the creepy suspicion that he was coming by my house sometimes. My stuff on my porch would be moved. At night, my motion sensor lights would go off, and I kept finding Mike's cigarette butts. Also, it was the same kind that he smoked. My roommate had been there about 4 months, when one night she had her boyfriend over, when someone started pounding on the door. When her boyfriend answered, he saw someone who looked like Mike running away. The next day, my roommate and her boyfriend went out of town for a concert. She gave me her gun, even though I felt safe, because she had gotten a dog. That was a training guard dog. I started watching a cooking show in the living room, and at some point, I had fallen asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to my dog, and the guard dog losing their minds, barking like mad out the window. There was a tall figure that bolted as soon as I sat up. I grabbed the gun, opened up the door, and yelled, "I know that's you. I have a gun. I'm calling the cops." Which I didn't do. I just locked me and the dogs in the bathroom and called my dad, who luckily was not angry about being woken up in the middle of the night. He drove over and advised calling the cops and filing a restraining order, which we called the cops, but they said since nothing was broken and there was no evidence, there was nothing to be done about it. Luckily after this, I heard through the grapevine that about a week after the incident with the dogs, Mike's family sent him to live with a relative in a different state. He did come back a couple of years ago, but he has been wise enough to only contact me once. When I got to tell him that Emma was not only happily married, but not at all interested in talking to him, I reminded him that I am willing to call the cops if he ever came near us again. He never did, and I don't see him anymore, though he did try to befriend my husband on Facebook. All it took was another block for him to go away. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.